Hi, this is Kevin from Let Me Tech You. In this video, I want to talk about something that's, probably a big topic in today's day and age of people trying to break into cloud and, probably wondering where should they start or how can they get the skills that they need. There's so much to know and learn and things like that. There's a lot of shifts of people not wanting to, say go directly to college for certain things or everyone learns in kind of a different way. So I want to kind of bring up some topics around things that I found useful when getting to, want to learn different cloud technologies and some of the things you might do on a day to day basis. So if you're just looking to break into the cloud or you're just looking for some additional projects to try to, do, I'm going to kind of go through this awesome Microsoft documentation that will kind of give you a place to kind of start. And you probably see a lot of people that say, "Hey, don't do tutorials. The step by steps don't give you the critical thinking that you need." Well, I'm here to tell you the tutorials have helped me a lot. You can modify the tutorials. It kind of gives you a place to start. So if you haven't already, if you want to follow along, I'm basically going onto the site here, learn.microsoft.com, and it's going to take you to the Azure documentation. And you're going to probably might be a little overwhelmed with some of the things that you might see on the left hand side here with all the different Azure products that they have. And I'm going to tell you, you're probably not going to touch a lot of these products. So it's really going to depend on what particular focus you want to kind of go into. But I will say, as far as the high level areas, you would probably spend a lot of time in compute. Um, Containers is being, kind of brought up a lot in the realm, but compute and networking are two of the areas where you might spend a lot of your time as far as initially learning, and then some of these other things will start to kind of fall through as far as how they kind of commingle. So storage is another one. So you might get you might get some exposure with like storage accounts or disk and things like that. But initially, I would recommend starting with networking. And the reason I say this is because networking is more the fundamental aspect of how a lot of things are connected in the cloud or in your everyday life. So, understanding how networking works and how things kind of can move across the network can kind of give you that overlay experience. So, what to look for when you're doing troubleshooting or you're needing to deploy virtual machines and stuff like that. So, you might see a couple different networking products. Now, don't worry about it. Some of these things you would further advance into as you start to get more familiar with how networking works. But where you want to initially start at is the virtual networks down here at the bottom. Wouldn't worry too much about the other stuff. This kind of gets into more advanced networking and routing, and depending on like what you're trying to secure, what kind of workloads you're utilizing, and stuff like that. So if you click on virtual network here, it's going to take you to the virtual network documentation. Now, if you're new to Azure, or you just want to kind of understand the concepts of their networking and how it works, I would definitely recommend checking out their overview here. They kind of just give you a brief synopsis of how the communication works, filtering network traffic, how it routes, and things like that. So it gives you some pretty good links of how different things work when you're working with virtual networks. And then, so if you don't already have an Azure subscription, I would recommend going to. Let me open up a private window here because I'm already signed in. So I just want to show you what it looks like. So if we go to portal.azure.com, actually let's go to azure.com. There we go. So you're going to see where it says, "Hey, try Azure for free." So I recommend if you don't have an account, sign up for one. You get free access. Just to basically deploy services, VNets, VMs, things like that, and it allows you to basically do everything we're going to do. I'm going to kind of show you here today, and in some of my other videos, if you've seen them, all without any cost to you. So definitely recommend signing up for this and getting an account set up. So once you get that all set up, first thing you're going to do is you're going to not have anything deployed, but you're basically going to be, saying, "Hey, I'm going to try to create a virtual network." And there's a couple different options you can kind of work with. You got Portal, PowerShell, Azure CLI, Bicep, and ARM templates. So these kind of more so like scripting in a way to actually do it without having to go through the portal. But if you're just learning, I would recommend going through the portal and doing it that way. And I say that because then you can kind of understand a lot better of what's being asked of you, what kind of things do you need to select, and the requirements and things like that. So when you actually, I'll open up the portal here and kind of give you a little idea of where that would be at. So once you get into the portal, there's a create a resource option. And in there, you basically just do virtual network, search for that, and create. And it just walks you through the same thing that is shown here in the portal. So this is basically the portal. So now the reason for the virtual network setup here of going through this first is this is how your VMs and things like that will attach to your virtual network so that you can access it, whether it be over the public or private network that you set up. So as you go through here, you're basically going to, create your virtual network. Walks you through if you want to enable Azure Bastion. If you're on a free service, you might be able to get, utilize this for free. Basically, this is a way to access your VMs or anything without having to expose them directly to the internet. It's going to create subnets, have you create a subnet. So the subnet's where your resources will live. So the VNet, if we look back at this here picture, the VNet is this blue area. So the VNet, think of it as like your full virtual network for that environment. Then what you would do is you would create subnets. So you see where it says subnet 1, Azure Bastion subnet. So your subnet is a portion of the virtual network that you'll put your VMs and things like that into. So anything inside of a VM or inside the same subnet can talk to each other. So it makes it a little easier as far as how you're used to on-prem, where you might have to do like some VLAN setups and things like that on the routers. You don't have to worry about anything. A lot of that's taken care of by Azure on the back end. So once you go through this and you actually get your virtual network set up, then that's when you can get into actually setting up VMs and things like that. So once you walk through this documentation, now there's some tutorials here. You can kind of get into, filtering traffic with like NSGs. So like say you have a network security group attached to this subnet that denies port, let's say 3389 denied, which is your, RDP access from the internet, but port 80 is allowed. So you can do some things like that to, better secure your workloads. Route network traffic, so you can do like some route tables, things like that. So they're really simple route tables that you can kind of attach to virtual networks, to subnets, to kind of direct the flow of traffic of how you want it, whether you're sending something to a firewall or to another subnet, or however your network's set up. And then you can also, restrict network access to, resources, to pass resources with the virtual network service endpoints. And that's a little more in depth. So, for example, like storage accounts, you can kind of have some denies and things like that on the firewall level. And so, like, really, like I said, as you're going through this is just a nice way to kind of get you more acclimated with how virtual networks work and how resources within those virtual networks can kind of be more secure and things like that. So once you get familiar with this portion, and then you go back, I would then, spend some of my time actually looking at, let's go back. So back on the left here. So then once you're familiar with networking, you got that pretty much, down packed, and you've been, utilizing some of the services within the virtual network, or like, the NSGs and stuff like that. You want to go into the compute area. And inside compute, same thing. You're going to see a lot of different product offerings. I would come down to where it says virtual machines here and click on that. Same setup. We're going to have some overviews of the virtual machines, Basically, this is just like if you're a system admin or someone who hasn't actually been utilizing the cloud per se, you might have done something like using VMware or some other type of virtual environment to where you're just deploying VMs essentially in another virtualized hypervisor type setup. Just this way, you're not having to manage the VMware ESXi server or whatever you're using. And so now you can actually scale your workloads a lot faster by easily just saying, hey, I need a VM. If we go back to the portal here, if I look for, actually, we can look here and see, hey, here's a Windows server. If I click create, so you're going to create the VM, choose the size, the image, and then the networking piece. Now that you're familiar with the networking, you can deploy it within your existing network that you already created, or you would have to create a new one. So, this is just where now you're kind of familiar. And then when you get to the networking piece, there's really nothing that's going to actually deter you from, understanding what's going on, because you already had the building block of building a VNet and a subnet. And then now you can attach your VMs to that particular VNet and subnet. So once you get into the VMs, it's just going to be a matter of actually, setting that up, getting your, public IP or however you want to access it attached to it. And then now that's going to give you now your little lab network, which I've did some videos on how to do that setup. So now you can start to learn and do more things within your free account. So again, I would, if underneath the tutorials, they probably have different Linux and Windows things there. They probably have, let's see. Yeah, so if you click on create a Windows VM under the portal, it's going to walk you through that same setup. So here it looks like it's having you install like a web server. And the good thing about this is you can basically build these on the fly and just delete them, keep building them, delete them. You don't have to worry about now how the old days were, where you had to stick a CD inside of a machine, install it onto a server, update everything, attach it to a network. The list goes on and on. In back in the day, you would have to actually be spending, thousands of dollars to have VMs sitting around, and typically you're not able to actually do much on those because they're usually have one OS on it, or there was an application or your production environment, you couldn't really touch it. So that's when then came VMware and all the other type of hypervisors, and then now the cloud. So with that, I would say virtual networks and then cloud. And then if you want to, after you got done with messing and learning with virtual machines a lot more, I would probably go in and let's go back. So security and storage. So security, there's going to be, it's kind of a mix. So security can kind of be dependent on what you're actually utilizing. So if you got VNets, security could be network security groups, Azure firewall. So you can actually, add in a firewall to your virtual network so that you can secure your workloads and, things like that. So there's a whole little section around security, and then also storage. Storage, if you do, I would say go, storage. You can get into actually creating like storage accounts, containers, shared access tokens, so that you can kind of test out just various things, as far as what kind of goes with a storage account. Now, with that, that's three of the areas I would kind of focus on if you're more so a beginner, you're trying to break into the cloud and just kind of get that foundational skill level around how things work. And the reason I say those three things is because it will actually lead you into figuring out what other areas you kind of want to go into. Is it going to be anything with containers? Instead of VMs, now you're going into containers. With the security side, do you want to do more stuff with firewalls and load balancers and app gateways and things like that? On the storage end, you can do things with like Azure Backup and securing uh, uh, files and how to actually work with like big data and stuff like that. So there's a lot of different areas you can see over here, but I would kind of focus on, like I said, compute, networking, and security or storage. And like I said, these other things, that's when you'll start to get into like, Azure DevOps and all the other things that kind of can bring those things together. So that's just a little video on, nice little website. If you haven't ever got a chance to check out learn.microsoft.com, I would definitely get familiar with that, bookmark that site, and just kind of run through some of those things. And that can maybe hopefully lead you into doing some certifications and getting yourself on a road to a journey in IT and the cloud. So if you have any questions around any of the documentation here, I want to do some videos on some like deeper level walkthroughs, and actually how to enhance some of these walkthroughs better to make them as like projects for your resumes and things like that, so that you can actually utilize things like Terraform, PowerShell, and stuff like that. Again, have any questions, like I said, drop me a comment down below, like and subscribe to my channel. Again, thanks for tuning in, and I hope to see you next time.